There's loads of great stuff in this episode, but listen, before we get going, I would love it if you could subscribe, but as well as that, just hit the notification bell as well, because as soon as there's a new episode or something fresh from all of us, you will get it first. But for now, grab a pen and paper, because I think you might need to make some notes on this episode. It's full of brilliant takeaways. Enjoy. Here we go.
Well, welcome to the pod, Stephen Hendry. Nice to have you with us.
Thanks very much. It wasn't a bad bunch of names you just listed and I came after that. That was very nice.
Yeah, I thought so. Which one did you like the most? Schumacher, bit of LeBron?
Yeah, Schumacher, I think people like Schumacher, Faldo. Again, individuals really. They're on their own when they're competing. Schumacher, like myself, 7 world titles. I kind of like that ring to it as well. But Tiger Woods, massive hero of mine. People who just couldn't get enough of winning, just greedy, really.
Right. Well, let's talk about that in detail then, and we'll start as we always do on this podcast with the same question. In your mind, what is high performance?
Picking up that trophy at the end of the event. That's your job. That was my job. It was almost like. People always say to me, "Oh, there was no emotion, there was no like crying or, real smiles or anything." I sometimes found it difficult to put on a genuine smile after I won the big titles, because to me it was the climax of all the work I'd put in, and it was my job to go there and win. And sometimes after I won on a Sunday night, I'd be back practicing the Monday for the next one, because I had that greed, which I think individual sportsmen, if they're going to be serial winners, have to have. They can never be satisfied, and I was never satisfied.
So do you think that anyone can learn to have that greed, as you call it? Or do you think that was something that you have, it's an innate part of you that meant not only could you get there and be the world champion, you could get there relentlessly, consistently?
I don't think that's something you can teach, no. I think, the sportsmen that you listed there, it's why very few in all sport, especially individual sports, can keep winning and winning and winning and dominate, because I've seen so many players in snooker, and golf's my other favourite sport, watching a lot of golf. They win a tournament, then they disappear. You say, what happened to that player? Then they haven't kept on winning. So yeah, it's something that I don't know where it came from, to be honest. But
and when you say it, what do you describe as it? What is the thing that meant it kept happening? That
greed, that never being satisfied, that always wanting to win another one. As I said before, winning on a Sunday night and being back in the practice table the next day. Yeah. Very few people can do that. Granted, in the beginning, I had a manager who cracked a whip and made sure I was not going to take a holiday or relax. But when I started to get success, then it was in me. I wanted to win the next one. I wanted to win, every tournament. And I think the reason why, in snooker over the past 20, 30 years, 40 years, there's only really been Steve Davis, then myself, and Ronnie to an extent, John Higgins to an extent, Mark, but they've kind of, because they've been in an era with themselves, they've not one of them has dominated to the way Steve and I did.
But if we go back to the origins of it, Stephen, I know that you started playing when you were 13. You described how you got that table at a relatively young age. So you're describing that almost mechanical nature of winning at a world level. When did the seeds of needing to win, needing to dominate start before that?
I got the small table 2 weeks before my 13th birthday, and just literally spent every minute that I could on that table. I just loved it. It was just something that clicked.
And what was it you loved about it?
I don't know. It's very difficult to understand it. At 13, it was just like I found I could just get down on the table, and naturally, you see beginners and go in clubs, and they're, after they've searched for a cue that's straight and for half an hour, and then they just get down, and they just don't look like they belong there. But I just felt comfortable on the table. I knew, my dad didn't have to tell me anything. I basically just put my left hand down the table, I put the cue on, and it just felt natural. And within a couple of weeks, I was making 50 breaks, just playing. Then I started watching on TV, learning from the players. But I started to get pleasure from being better than people, even if it was just family, friends. I got this thing, I'm actually better than people at something. And that sort of, I think, put something in there.
And had you had that experience of being exceptional or better than people before that, or was snooker the first place you found that feeling?
Yeah, snooker was definitely the first. I played football and badminton at primary school, being part of teams, but never excelled, never stood out. At school I wasn't exceptional. Again, never stood out, not the bottom, but not the top. So snooker was the first thing in my life that I was a bit different to everyone else.
That's interesting, isn't it? It's almost like it gave you a feeling you'd never had before. And so you stuck with snooker because you wanted more of that feeling, like a drug, I guess.
Yeah, and I think all through my teenage years, I mean, people always say, do you regret you missed out on what normal teenage boys do, parties, girlfriends, drinking for the first time, whatever it is. And I never felt I missed out. I just wanted to play snooker. I just wanted to, as soon as school was finished, sometimes before school finished, weekends, I just wanted to play. The only thing in my mind was getting on that table.
Wow.
Was it necessary, though, that sacrifice? So look, all three of us having this conversation are parents, right? All three of us want our kids to live an amazing life and basically do what you did. We'd all love our kids to find their thing, wouldn't we? Yep. And excel at it. And we keep watching them do things and go, oh, that's not quite for them. But maybe they'll find something eventually. So was it necessary for you to have the sacrifice to go along with finding your thing?
I think so, yeah. I think I was fortunate, again, as parents, you probably wouldn't give the same advice again, but I was fortunate that I had parents who didn't really say, stop playing snooker, you've got homework to do, whether that makes them bad parents, I don't know. But I think very early on, my dad especially, through taking me around clubs and stuff and people talking, I think he knew there was something there. So it didn't stop me playing snooker. It didn't say, no, you're only going to play at weekends because you need to study and all that. So it was, I didn't, the sacrifice was probably necessary to keep improving quickly because obviously 33 years later I turned pro. So I did improve very, very quickly through the sort of junior and amateur scene. And if I'd not played as much snooker to study or, do other stuff, then possibly the rise wouldn't have been as quick.
So we can focus on the sacrifices you made. What I'm interested in, Stephen, is what did it give you? So this enhanced status of being exceptional at something and being recognised, what do you feel that offered you as an individual?
Different things, really. It does give you a bit of confidence in yourself. In those days in snooker, you're mixed with people who are much older than you. I was playing in clubs, sometimes in kind of British Legion clubs where I wasn't supposed to be in. You're playing league matches, they basically smuggle me in, play my 2 frames and straight back out again. You had to be 18 to be in. But I think spending the whole of my teenage life and young life around older people made me sort of a bit more streetwise or more wiser than my age in terms of just life. Basically, not in terms of academical stuff, because I left school with no qualifications, so that's that went out the window. But spending life with like older people and stuff, and then just experiencing things, competition, winning things. It makes you feel like you've got something that's it gives you that little bit of inner confidence.
I guess it's about feeling special and feeling a bit different to everybody else. And it's almost embarrassing to talk about something that I experienced when I'm comparing it to a multiple world champion. But I remember when I was living in Norwich and I first started doing little bits and pieces on the television, and I'd go like in a bar or something and literally only 1 or 2 people would go, oh, that's that guy that does that show that I can't remember his name or even the programme he's on. But that would give me this like feeling of, oh, there's something a bit special about this. And that then led to, right, so I'm not going to get drunk tonight because that might be embarrassing, and I'm going to get up early tomorrow and I'm going to try a bit harder at my job because it will feed into that feeling of being different. And now I say to my kids all the time, I say, look, have this mindset that you're a bit more special. That you look at all those other kids in your class and that's them, but you are different, because I want them to have that feeling, because I think it's really powerful, that feeling that you are not normal. There's something unique about you. And even if you're right or wrong, what's the point in not thinking that?
It's a big part of your identity.
Yeah.
So how did you go to take that theme that Jake's talking about then, Stephen, that you've gone from being a middle-of-the-road kid at school, to finding a place where you're suddenly exceptional. You've got adults acknowledging your talent. How did you make that transition? Because I imagine that was more difficult for people around you to deal with your success than for you personally.
I didn't. I didn't really take it in a lot. I was just playing snooker, and but there's a time obviously in the beginning. There's a transition where snooker stops being a hobby and starts becoming a job. But at that time, through my teenage years, I was just loving what I was doing. I mean, I was just playing snooker. I was getting to, leave school on a Friday night to go down to London or wherever to play in pro-ams and not come back on a Monday. I was getting, allowed to do this. I mean, I was fortunate again, my parents, but the school was quite, because they'd seen me in the papers, the local papers, winning things. And financially, I supported myself since I was 13 and a half, 14.
Yeah.
My parents haven't had to buy me anything, because I was winning monies and just buying my own clothes and stuff. And so it makes you independent, makes you feel independent. And but yeah, I didn't. I was kind of. It was quite surreal, I suppose, when you're looking back on it.
Did it feel like it almost happened to you rather than you made it happen? Do you know what I mean by that? Like you just were playing snooker and this thing, you just almost stepped onto this roller coaster ride and you were just, in your mind, I was just playing snooker. But it was taking you incredible places.
Yeah, there was no, I wasn't thinking at that stage that, wow, this is going to be a career. I'm going to win world championships.
So there was no strategy at this age?
No, not at all. It was just, basically it was my dad and I travelling around the country, playing pro-ams, playing amateur tournaments. I was just loving it because I was playing snooker. I had no thoughts of, I'm not getting any qualifications. What am I going to do in my life? I wasn't thinking ahead to the next tournament the next weekend. That was all. That was my only thoughts. So yeah, it was just kind of like going along with it, basically.
But that can't happen forever, though, can it?
No.
Because the number of people that we speak to who have not done what you've done even once, not been a world champion even once, and they say, I really enjoyed being a young racing driver or a young snooker player or a young footballer, but I never realised that to carry on that trajectory, at one point the hard work had to kick in as well. So when was the moment that you realised it had to be about more than just playing snooker and enjoying it?
I won the Scottish Amateur Senior title at 14 and then again at 15. And in those days, the only way getting your professional ticket was to either win your national championship, which I did, or win the World Amateur Championship. So at 15, I won it the second time. I had a choice whether to enter the World Amateur Championship, which I thought I could win, but then I might not win and I miss a chance to turn pro, and then I might not win the next year. So this guy, Ian Doyle, who had a snooker club in Stirling, who had been to play some junior tournaments, was getting into snooker. His company sponsored the Scottish Amateur Senior title. He had a kind of meeting with my dad. He wanted to get into snooker. He wanted to take over my career, basically, be a manager, take care of sponsorship, all that sort of stuff. So between my dad, Ian, and I, and my mum, I was saying that we had to take a decision whether should we turn pro now or stay as an amateur. We made the decision that I couldn't learn any more as an amateur. Let's just get in with the big boys. And I'd always played my best snooker in the biggest occasions. So we turned pro at 16, but I was still practicing in a place called Miller's in Broxburn where my mates were. So we were kind of like, I was there all day, but we'd go in and maybe have a couple of hours. It wouldn't be serious. We'd have a few laughs, stop for a couple of hours, maybe play some 3-card brag and play the fruit machines. And just, it wasn't a structured thing. And unbeknownst to me, my manager had come into the club just to see what I was doing. And yeah, very quickly, he basically said, if I'm going to back you, you're going to work your bollocks off. This is because you're not going to, I've done it throughout my career, and the only way you're going to get there is in his opinion at the time, is to properly work at this game. So my dad didn't totally agree. He thought I could do it without this regimen of work. So, but basically, Ian took me out of the club where I was to his club in Stirling, which is probably 30 miles away from where I was. So my dad had to take me there every day, drop me off at 10 in the morning, and I'd stay there till 6 at night with an hour for lunch, and I'd just practice on my own 7 days a week.
Wow.
No, I hated it. Firstly, I just hated it because this was just like, this is, talk about stop being a hobby and becoming a job. This became a job. This wasn't like playing snooker because I wanted to. This was, you had to be there at this time and you had to leave at that time. And it was just so hard to play.
And did you have a coach, Stephen, when you were in this club?
No, and I didn't have a coach until later on in my career.
Right.
In the beginning, I learned everything from watching TV on my small table to try and do the shots. You couldn't, because small tables are rubbish. You can't play. But that's how I learned, basically, from watching likes of Jimmy, Steve Davis and stuff. But this sort of relentless work ethic, I mean, his office was like connected. He had hardware business connected. Half the building was that, and half the building was a snooker club. And he used to come out every half an hour, check I was practicing.
Really?
You know, just poke his head through the door and check I was still there. But literally within a month to 2 months, I could feel my game getting sharper. You know, my positional play was getting sharper, and I could just. And although it was hard, you know, after about a few, I started to feel that like my game was this. I was getting better, and the first tournament I played in was a Scottish Professional Championship. I'd had various sort of, exhibitions with the top players, and I'd always get beat. And this was the Scottish Professional was my first tournament after this sort of work, this job started, and I won it comfortably, and it was just like, wow, this is taking my game to another level.
And we speak a lot about this. You do that. One of the most crucial aspects for anyone in life is evidence. So it's pretty shitty to spend hours and hours and hours on your own knocking snooker balls around.
Yeah.
But it's not shitty when you then go and win a tournament because of that. And it feels like as soon as Stephen saw the evidence, that's when it made a difference.
Well, this is where the research comes from that has often been sort of misappropriated about the 10,000 hours rule. So the guy, I don't know if you're familiar with it, Stephen, around.
I've heard of it, yeah.
There's a guy called Anders Ericsson that studied violinists, and he found that to be world class, you needed to invest 10,000 hours in it. And I think people misappropriate it and think that it's just about hard work. But I think for a static sport like where you're learning technique, like snooker, rather than dynamic like football, there is some relevance in the 10,000 hours, and it sounds like that was your first immersion in proper hard work of investing those hours in it, that you saw immediate results from it.
Absolutely. I mean, my manager, there's no way he had any scientific reason for behind it. He was just this Scottish businessman who'd worked his nuts off throughout his life, and he thought, well, that's the way everyone else must do it to get success. There was no, as I say, I don't think he'd put any research into it. Basically, I think he thought, if I'm going to back you and sponsor you, you're going to work. I'm putting it in, so you're going to put it in. But yeah, I mean, it's the practice can only work. I think you need the three ingredients. You need the obviously natural talent to go with it, and you need the ability to play under pressure. You need those three things together.
Well, that was a phrase.
You need to enjoy the pressure.
Yeah, but there was a phrase that you used quite casually in that last bit where you were explaining that journey, where you said, "I always played my best when I came under pressure," and you said that very matter of fact, and yet. That isn't a matter-of-fact statement that when you come under pressure, you rise to the occasion. Would you explain where you learned that ability just to be able to turn it on in those big moments?
I have no idea, is the honest answer, where that came from, because, none of my parents were, done anything in front of crowds or anything like excelled or anything. But yeah, I mean, even the Scottish Amateur senior title, you play the tournament through clubs, and by the time you got to final, they put it in a venue, put a table in, put seating around it, and I just always played brilliant. I just loved it. I just felt comfortable there.
So how did you process that? Where you're there, you're in a big final. This is your first title you can win as still an adolescent competing against men. What was going through your head when you turned up for that final?
It's very hard to put into words. I think just excitement.
Excitement about winning.
Yeah, excitement about just playing in that venue. I think I just walk in and see the seats and see the table and thought, wow, that looks amazing. That was my thought. That looks, I just can't wait to get out there.
Did it look like you'd seen on TV, which was where you'd got all your coaching from?
Yeah. But not even, I wouldn't even think about TV. I just think about, I just can't wait to get out there and play, where, through your career, you players that are happy being on the outside tables, and as soon as they get in the TV table, I mean, I'm doing commentary work now, and you see them, they're like a rabbit in headlights. They just don't want to be out there. They just want to be where no one can see them. That's where they're comfortable. But there was no thought of me being out of my comfort zone.
But what I mean by that, Stephen, is that you said that most of your coaching was done through watching TV, which naturally is focusing on the big games where you've got the crowd around you and the seating and things like that. So did it just feel that was exactly what you would expect, that you'd only ever studied big games, so it was almost that it felt natural for you?
Yeah, I think in terms of watching the other players, I was like, it wasn't so much the surroundings, it was just their game I wanted to learn, it's the shots I wanted to learn. Obviously, when you watch something like the Crucible and you see that atmosphere, there is that. You walk out and you kind of think this is the big time kind of thing. But to be honest, it didn't. I didn't walk out and think, wow, this is. I just did it. It's very. I'm sorry, I don't sound like there's some magic secret in this, but it was just something that I
think it's fascinating that there isn't a magic secret to it, because I think that there will be people who practice as hard as you, have the desire as much as you do, but for whatever reason, when they're under pressure, they crumble. And there will be sportsmen and women whose entire careers have kind of been pulled apart by the fact that when it really mattered, they couldn't deliver. And they would have investigated every single possible facet of themselves to try and find the answers to that. So are you saying there was no psychological technique? You didn't have to calm yourself down, you didn't take a breath, you didn't remind yourself that this feels almost inevitable that you were going to be competing on a stage like this, or that all the hours that you were putting in practicing meant that you could be completely relaxed because you'd done the hard work where the lights weren't and there wasn't a crowd and you'd put in the hard yards? You didn't have to have any of those thoughts?
No, I think with my first professional tournament, I think I was nervous. I was out of my comfort zone a little bit, because playing amateur tournaments, you're going to snooker clubs and the conditions are not great sometimes. There's no referees and stuff, and there's my first tournament, I think I played a guy called Barry West, and obviously you've got to have full evening wear on, the table's perfect, the cloth's perfect, you got a referee, and I did I felt a little bit, I thought this is different, but I loved it, but I couldn't. It took me my first season, I lost more matches than I won. I mean, simplified, they were better players than me at that stage. They were professionals, and I'd just turned pro. So that there was obviously that reason. But there was a match where Jimmy White was my idol when I first started playing. When I first got in the WTA, I watched it because the way he played, the flair, the shots. And there was a tournament every year where the Scottish professional champion got a sort of token entry into the Scottish. I forget who the sponsor was. Was it Lang Supreme or something? It was in Glasgow. So the 7 best players in the world would play and won Scotsman. So an 8-man tournament, invitation tournament. And I was drawn against Jimmy White in the first round at 16 or 17. And I got beat 5-0. And basically I just sat in my chair in awe of Jimmy because he was my hero. Yeah. And oh my God, when I got off, did I get a bollocking from my dad and my manager for if this is what you're going to do, just sit and watch these, you may as well finish now. And it was a wake up call straight away that if I was to be a success, I've got to get out of this them and me kind of thing.
Yep. And
that was one of the best things I think my manager did, that everywhere we went, even in my first season, we stayed in the same hotels as the top players. So I was around that, because a lot of the players that turned pro would stay in bed and breakfast and stuff, and then come to play Steve Davis, and they'd be above them already, because he's staying in a better hotel, he's got a better everything. So that was a very clever thing to do, to put me in a sort of level playing field in that respect.
So because I've read that you famously didn't associate with other players once you were dominating the sport. So when did you make the decision to do that, as opposed to hoovering up as much information around them and understanding their lifestyle and habits? Again,
it was a sort of joint thing with my manager and I. I said that Jimmy White was my hero, but when I started watching snooker more and more, Steve Davis was the guy who was winning, and I thought, that's the guy who I want to be. I don't want to be Jimmy plays all the good shots, but he's the man that's winning. So we kind of looked at Steve and Barry Hearn's approach, where Steve you know, the practice, the dedicating your whole life, you know, having no outside interests, no, you know, girls, parties, whatever, and just keeping yourself apart from everyone else, keeping yourself like aloof. So when people did come to play, they had no, you know, connection with you at all. They seen you as someone who was above them because you didn't associate with them.
So you were playing psychological mind games before you ever got on the bays?
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think later on in my career, when I started to, you know, relax a bit and have, you know, go out for dinner and stuff, that there was definitely a part of my downfall was becoming friends with people. Yeah. It's difficult sometimes because later on in the career there was so much traveling. You'd end up being in the same plane, you'd be in the same hotels, whatever, and it would get more difficult. But in the beginning it was a definite thing. It was just Ian, the guy who was my road manager, and me would eat together. We'd just go back to practice and then go back to the hotel, and we wouldn't mix with anyone else.
What I like about this is that it obviously had an effect on the people you were playing, because they were looking at you like you're an enigma, thinking, I don't know who this guy is, I don't know where he stayed, I don't know what he eats before he plays or how he's going to play. I can't sort of break the facade. But it feels like it was also quite an important thing from your perspective as well. It gave you a bit of armour to know that they knew nothing about you. It moved you in your head above them.
Yeah, I think so. And there was part of me that thought I'm missing out on stuff because, like, a little bit more into my professional career, maybe 17, 18, 19, I could see players going out for dinner and having a drink and everything. And a little part of me was thinking, I'm missing out a bit from. But then I was winning, and that was, you know, I preferred the winning to the, like. I mean, as I said, you know, Jimmy White, again, going back to him, but like, you know, he didn't win.
Yeah,
he did win. Of course, he won events through his career, but he wasn't.
But he famously lost all the finals that he competed in, didn't he? That was the sort of big thing for him.
Yeah, and you talk about people who don't realise. I mean, he's been in 6 finals and not converted once. There has to be something that's missing there. You know, I would think if I'd been in 6 world finals and not won one of them, I'd want to know why. And there obviously is reasons why, but it's.
But I've heard people that have worked with Jimmy White in the past talk about this idea that he'd almost reconciled him with that sense that that's just what he does. He blows the big moment. That chaos is almost a friend of his. Yeah,
you know, that's part of his charm, I suppose.
So, what was your identity? So, how would you have described your identity then?
I mean, pretty cold, really. I mean, miserable is a word that gets.
So was that a conscious decision? That cold, aloof?
No, that was just my natural at the table.
Was it?
That was just my natural way. I didn't, you know, I wasn't there to laugh and joke and what have you. I knew I had personality inside, but when I was on the table, I wasn't there to do that sort of stuff. I was there to win. And I think if you look at snooker nowadays, and I think most sports actually, the competitors are getting a lot younger and more like single-minded. They're just there to win. They're not there to like make jokes or the Dennis Tails and stuff that you'd see them having people always say to me, there's no personalities in the game anymore. There is, but just when they're on the table, they're there to win. And I think Steve Davis was that. And I think after Steve Davis, again, I kind of learned a bit of Steve and just having this, you know, this not show any emotion. In practice, I would show emotion. If I missed a shot, I'd, you know, bang my cue and swear whatever. But when you go in that table in the ring, you can't show your opponent any weakness.
And you learned that yourself, because I remember hearing Andre Agassi talk about his dad had drilled him relentlessly that he wasn't allowed to show emotion and things like that, and that was somebody exerting influence on him. But you came to that conclusion on your own in those hours in the snooker hall.
Yeah, again, from, you know, watching TV learning, watching Steve Davis learning, watching the way he was at the table. Not if he missed a ball, he'd just turn around and walk back to his seat. Tried, you know, there was times where I have shown, and sometimes you just can't help it. It's human nature. It just, you know, you're not a robot. You can't just program it and that nothing's going to affect you. But in time, that's something that you can work on, I believe. I don't think you can work on being able to play your best under pressure, but I think you can work on trying not show, you know, as much emotion. My you know, even go through junior events and you know, I would see fathers like, you know, just castigating their sons and that for missing and like, and my dad never did. The only thing my dad ever done was, I was probably not even 14 in a junior event, and I missed a shot and I went back and I had my head down, and he just went, "Get your head up." And that's the only thing he never Never criticised me ever. If I played a bad match or in the car going home, he would never say anything. That's the only one thing he ever did was just keep your head up.
Wow. It feels to me like control is a real recurring theme in your career, whether it's the hours and hours on the sort of bays, practicing, getting yourself ready, whether it's making sure you're not going out for drinks with your fellow pros the night before a game, whether it's not smiling and showing emotion when you play an incredible shot in the final of the World Snooker Championship. At all times, emotional control was kind of at the centre, I think, of your success, was it?
Yeah, definitely.
So did you enjoy it?
Enjoy the
process. You enjoyed the winning, the moment you lifted the trophy or the moment you potted the winning shot. But did you enjoy the process getting to that point?
As I said in the beginning, the practice was... I think the practice was always hard to do. I mean, a snooker table never changes. And that's one thing later on in my career where I stopped practicing as much, because even in golf practice, it must be boring hitting hundreds and hundreds of balls, but on a given day, the wind could be in a different direction. So it's still different. And the snooker table never changes. So you're doing the same routines for 30, 40 years. That's one of the reasons why I stopped playing. I just couldn't do that anymore. But so I don't think if someone says to me, oh, I just love playing 7 hours a day, 7 days a week on my own, I don't think they do. I don't think you do it because you see... I was fortunate. I got a result from it. I was winning, but you see these. I hate to use the word journeyman pros. They still do that and don't get how they. I always admire people who can keep doing it.
Yeah.
When there's nothing coming at the end of it, I was getting success, and that made me want to practice more. If I didn't get the success, then would I be able to keep doing that? I don't know.
So how hard was it then when you didn't get the success? The first time you were doing exactly what you've always done and you weren't winning games of snooker?
If I take it forward to when I started winning, and then, if I had a loss, it would be very difficult to go in the next day. And so, I mean, the odd time if I played really well, I wouldn't go in the next day, but I'd go in the day after that. And you just had to, that's again, this is my job. I'm a professional snooker player. I've got to practice, and again, I had a manager who cracked a whip and said, you play, you got to keep doing it, keep doing it, and then I would win the next one, and then so every time you had a disappointment, and then you came back from that one, that would give you even more satisfaction.
So you became comfortable with failure?
No, never. I was never comfortable with failure.
Really, you never saw it as part of a process. Of learning?
No, I thought every time I lost a match, it was the end of the world. And, I still, I used to say in press conferences, it's a disaster. And people say, no, there's worse things happen in the world and everything. Yeah. But I always hate that when people say that, because I think as a sportsman, that is the worst thing that's happening in the world at that precise moment.
For you, yeah.
That you've lost a match or you've lost that. Isn't it? I mean, it's just... It's horrific, and I've done press conferences where I literally one-word answers and just get out of there and sulk for 3 or 4 days, not speak to anyone. Losing is the hardest part for me of being a sportsman.
So the fact that you can sit here now, though, Stephen, and you're so eloquent and you're rounded and you do seem to have a greater perspective on life than just what happened on a snooker table, is obviously testimony to the fact that you have learned to process defeat in some way or the end of a career. When did you learn to do that then?
I think I won my last World Championship in 99, and I think the rest of my career, I retired in 2012. I think the rest of my career I won maybe half a dozen events from then to the end of my career. And I think my whole process relaxed from the beginning. The practice was more sporadic. I mean, I would still do, if I felt there was a tournament coming out, I would still do that, but I'd only do it maybe 4 or 5 days before, really put the hours where it was my whole life before.
Sure.
It was 7 days a week, 4 weeks, every month, every year. I mean, it's... it's and then you do get used to defeat. It doesn't, and it's a different kind of hurt, really. I don't read many books. I read Agassi's book, and he says that the pain of defeat is a bigger sensation than the thrill of winning, and it is. It's far more. Winning, I would take for granted. Defeat, I would, suffer for days. But there's got a difference between it sort of hurting and you want to do something about it to near the end of the career when you get used to it and it's a kind of more of a depression.
Right.
Gets in where you think I can't win anymore, and then you get used to defeats, used to playing badly, and that was when at the end I thought I can't take this anymore.
So when did you make the decision to stop referring to yourself as a snooker player then?
I don't know. I still think I'm a snooker player now. I mean, people say, "What do you do?" I'm a snooker player.
Right.
Snooker is what I do. It's what I'm best at. Okay, I'm not a professional snooker player at the moment, but I still see myself as a snooker player.
But my sense, the reason I asked that question is my sense is that if we'd had spoken to you during your 20s, you would have been singularly a snooker player, whereas I sense it's not. I think it's a both and perspective now. You're a snooker player and you're a father. You're an amateur golfer. There's things like that.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, when did you start to add on those other aspects of?
I think obviously normal life things like I had a girlfriend who became a wife. Then you have a family. Life changes, and I always fought against that. People say, "Oh, you're going to get married. That's it. That's the end of your career." And all that's you have kids. That's it. And I always fought against that. I still kept practicing. I was determined to keep practicing. Again, the reason why there's so few people can win relentlessly is they sacrifice even family to get to. Snooker's my life is number one. That came first, even before my wife, my kids, everything. Obviously, it ended to the detriment of my marriage and everything. It was all about me, and I think it's very cold, but it has to be that. It's if I look at all the top sportsmen, individual sportsmen, many of them are still married to the same woman. Very, very few.
Very few.
Very
yeah.
few.
So obviously, it ended up the breakdown of your marriage, and you probably don't see your children as often as you would have done when you were in a house with them every single day. Would you still have that same approach to life if you did it all over again? Do you think you couldn't have achieved what you did as a snooker player without that?
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
I couldn't have achieved. I couldn't have been the winner I was, and being there as well as.
So here's an interesting one then. If you had your time again, would you win less games of snooker, be at home more, and be married to your wife still and have a sort of family life? Or is the winning, which we spoke about right at the beginning, the thing that you feel you were put on this earth to do, to be a winner?
Definitely. I mean,
Right.
there's going to be a lot of people watching this thinking, what an absolute cold son of a bitch. But that's what I was putting. I was putting this there to win snooker matches, win world titles, and be as dedicated as I was to be the best. And yeah, given the same decisions, I'd make the same decisions again. Whether that makes me a horrible person or not, other people can decide that. But for me, I made that decision.
And you're certain you couldn't have done both?
Who can tell, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Only looking at myself, looking at the other people that I admired, the Tiger Woodses, the Faldos, Steve Davis, they wanted to be the best and dominate the sport, and to everything else. Not that we didn't care or love these people,
There has to be casualties
that
along
had to
the
come
way,
second.
yeah.
That has to come second if you want to do what I did.
Yeah.
I think it's really refreshing, Jay, to hear that honesty. I think we live in a world where people think you can be everything, and the reality is it's a world where you have to prioritise, and your decisions are pretty clear.
I do really want to talk to you about the period where you struggled with your snooker, because you're so in control all the time. You're someone that knows if you can control everything, you can keep on winning games of snooker. So when you didn't win for a long period and eventually decided to walk away from the game, how did you reconcile that in your own brain? Because the evidence was still there that you have the natural ability. You were a multiple world champion. How did you cope with that? And what strategies did you use to try and recover from the issues when playing?
You mean at the end of my career when I was still playing but not winning?
Yeah.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult because I became an also ran. I became someone You know, I used to enjoy in the 90s being people talking about you being the favourite.
Well, you were special from the moment you started playing, weren't you?
Yeah, exactly. So then I wasn't.
That.
So then I'm not special. You know, I'm used to people saying, "Who's the favourite for this?" So Stephen's going to win. Stephen's going to win. Stephen's the best player in the world. Stephen's world champion. Stephen's world #1. So all of a sudden, oh, Stephen, he can't play anymore. He's not the same player anymore. He's never going to win another tournament. He's slipping down the rankings. So you're getting all that positive feedback. Then all of a sudden you're getting all this negative feedback constantly. And whenever you lose another match, then it's another is he gone? He's gone. And then that's the thing. It's like it works. It's all this positive is feeding you. It's feeding your confidence on the way up. I mean, and then obviously the negative is feeding you as well, but it's keeping you down. So it's for me it was very difficult. And to be just to not. Be competitive was the thing for me. You know, people always said, you know, why did you retire? And so, you know, when you were still, you could play. But for me, winning was the enjoyment. You know, Steve kept on playing after me, long after me, and I said, "What are you doing?" I said, "You're losing to people who shouldn't be in the same table as you." And he said, "I just treat it as a day out, and see what."
And you couldn't do that.
I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that.
Could you do that now that you've announced that you're going to return to snooker? Could you treat it as a day out, or is this about coming back to win?
Well, that's going to be a big test for me, because I made it public that the reason I retired is because I couldn't win, and that was the enjoyment I got from snooker. Then it's a different situation now. The slate's clean. For me, it's to see it's not a full-time comeback. I'm not going to practice 6-7 hours a day. I'm going to have to start practicing regularly.
Yeah, but this
again.
Doesn't sound like you though. We've just spent hours talking about total control, practice for hours, show no emotion, don't speak to other players, and it's all about winning.
Yeah.
Why are you now telling us it's the total opposite?
I think I want to see. It's part curiosity. I want to see if I can, as I say, I'm doing stuff differently technically. With a coach, and so that's starting to like make me hit the ball properly again, which I wasn't doing before for whatever reason. I quoted yips in my book. It was a thing when just decelerating through the ball, not striking. So consequently, it's come out that I've not been aiming correctly. And I'm not going to bore you with the technical stuff, but yes, it's about sighting things properly or whatever. I still don't understand it all 100% because I did snooker naturally. You know, when I started, I just played, and now you've got to sort of practice a sort of, you know, a routine.
But this is the flexible perspective on life, isn't it?
Very much. But I'm interested in the idea of coaching. So you're learning a different way of playing. Did you have a coach first time round?
I've had 3 or 4 coaches through my career. My first coach was an old guy called Frank Callan, who's passed away now, but he was someone who coached Steve Davis, and I went with him because I didn't feel my long potting was consistent enough. So he kind of changed my cue action a bit. I was with him for a few years and then won most of my world titles with him, actually. Then had a break. Then went with Terry Griffiths, who changed my cue action completely. And got back to world #1. Didn't win a world championship, but went back from 7 or 8 where I was back to world #1 again. And then I had a coach called Stephen Hendry near the end of my career, actually at the very end as well, who tried to instill some sort of sports psychology as well into it. But for something, when I walked into an arena, say the world championship final, whatever, it just came naturally for me to be focused and I'd just switch on. Where to try and put that in, what's the word I'm looking? Sort of fake.
Yeah.
I found it hard to get that. He did a lot of things and introduced like meditation and visualization, and he suggested watching videos of my old successes to try and put that in there. But as I said to him, says all that does is tell me how shit I am now. That's all I got from it.
Right.
And it was a truly. I think you have to, these sort of things, you really have to buy in.
Sure.
And be a certain to take that stuff in.
But one technique they often use in, say, sports psychology is they talk about, think of it as a brick wall, and every brick adds up to a whole wall. So and the hours of practice, the effort that you were putting in gave you that evidence that therefore was the scaffolding for your confidence. And it sounds to me that those hours in the Stirling snooker hall gave you that that ability to just go and play naturally because you had the evidence that you could do it.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the fact that you're going to make a comeback, but you're also saying you're not going to build that brick wall with the same level of diligence of the practice and the hours that you're going to put into it. So why do you expect to get a different result this time?
I mean, I'm saying my plan at the moment is not to practice that long. If I suddenly do that, if I continue with this process of the technical stuff and my game gets to a stage where I think, well, I'm playing the way I used to play, then I'd be surprised if something doesn't trigger me into wanting to do more. I'm at the moment, I'm just trying to keep my expectations low because I don't want to just and the public's expectations, because I don't want to come back to a tournament, lose the first match 6-0, and everyone go, oh well, that was a waste of time. What is he doing? So I'm trying to keep sort of my expectations, outside expectations, and try and say, look, I want to experience walking out into arena again. I realise I'm going to be at the bottom of the rankings. I might not be on TV table straight away, but there's a chance if I get drawn against...
You probably will be.
No, but if I get drawn against... say I go to the UK Championship, I get drawn against Judd Trump or Ronnie Sullivan, I'm going to be in the main table. So it's to see what that'll be like. But yeah, I mean, it's a total contradiction to what I used to do. I write what you're saying. I mean, how can I talk about how I got to the top and then talk about now and say I'm just going to be happy with this?
Is there an argument that maybe you're slightly concerned privately about doing what you always used to do and still not winning? So you would rather not do what you always used to do?
I think in part, and it's whether at 51 years old I can still go in and play for 6 hours. It's whether near the end of my career I was just getting bored after an hour. I had the table at home because the snooker club I was in had shut down, so I had to practice at home, which wasn't the same because it's not the same. Going to work, it was like it's there, and I'd play for an hour and say I'll stop for a cup of tea. And then a cup of tea becomes half an hour, becomes I'll play tomorrow. And it has to become a job again. And whether at 51 I can do that, I've got that in me to have that dedication.
I sense it all comes back to winning though. And if you came back and won, that dedication would suddenly appear.
Well, if I came back, the first tournament I played in and all of a sudden I won 2 or 3 matches, again, I want to keep expectation low, but if I thought, I've beat 2 or 3 players here, I've played well, I would be very surprised if that didn't give me the inspiration.
Because that's your driver. Your driver is not that you love practicing or you love being on your own in a room or you love travelling the world. Your driver is you love to win. So I feel if you win again, there's the driver. There's the reason you'll be back on it 7 hours a day, won't you?
No, I don't think I'll ever go back to that. I seriously don't.
Really?
I don't think it's physically possible for me to do that, actually. I think I would end up just going through the motions. I think that sort of dedication is, I think, a young man's thing. I really believe that. I think, how many sportsmen at that age are doing that practice because they've done that their whole lives, and you really have to have a will and a you have to, I don't know the right word, but you have to really want to do that. And I think, as you all, I think it's very difficult to sort of motivate yourself to do that every day. Sure,
but taking the clues of your success in snooker, have you ever been tempted to actually just find something else that you love, where you could be successful at, and dedicate yourself to that, but away from the sport?
I love cooking. That's my hobby. I'm a big, massive foodie and stuff. So I've always thought that it would be cool to go and do, a catering college and get proper and get properly good at cooking and know.
You don't get a trophy though at the end of that.
Well, that's exactly. You don't get trophies. I mean, MasterChef went out in the first round, but but no, there's. I mean, obviously my big hobby is golf, and I'd love to get good at golf, but again, I'm not going to go in the range and hit balls for 6 hours to do it. It's more that is a hobby. So yeah, there's nothing in my life that'll ever have that sort of dedication that I had at snooker. I don't think.
I've found this conversation fascinating, to go through the way that you operated and the mindset you had and how rigidly you approached your career. I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, you think, Damien, but I think having this conversation with Stephen, what we're picking up here is that he is someone that almost to an unhealthy degree perhaps was very, very rigid in his thinking. And when things started going wrong, when you've got a very rigid way of thinking, it's almost impossible to deal with that because you don't know what to do. Whereas now Stephen's coming back to snooker with a sort of a flexible perspective on how he's going to operate.
Yeah.
And let's see how it goes.
I've had the metaphor in my head, Stephen, of, when you go abroad on holiday and you see the typical Brit trying to order a drink at a bar and they don't speak the language, and the way that they do it is they shout louder and speak slower, and they don't become more more comprehensible. They just become more obnoxious in the process. I think you see a lot of sports people do that process of they just do more of the same thing over and over again. And I think what you're doing takes courage to learn a new language to be able to communicate and play in a very different way.
I think when you look at someone like Ronnie O'Sullivan, who people say now he's had such longevity in the game, he's won world championships in different decades, is perhaps it's almost I don't know whether that's a better way of being, that he's not his whole life hasn't been snooker. Like me, I mean my world champion, they all came within 10 years. My domination was that 10-year period, where he's been at the top since he came in in '92. I was still the number one player, and he's come through and he's still winning now. The fact that he's not, snooker isn't his be all and end all, and it's certainly a way that. But whether I could have done that, I don't know. I'd never know that. So yeah, it's say that the doing it as I did, like totally with that intensity. You think it would be impossible for that to last as long as up to now.
One thing that surprised me, Stephen, in terms of one of the responses you gave, was how important positive affirmation from outside was in terms of boosting your confidence, but on the flip side of it, how the negative feedback had a huge impact on you as well. Where is the confidence in yourself going to come from, in the idea that you're not worried about external validation, you're happy with what you've achieved and the impact and the legacy that you've left? Do you ever dwell on that to reflect on it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the first match I play, I'll be scared about what's happening, but obviously there'll be a lot of attention on it, and if I fail, then there's going to be a lot of negative, and nowadays social media and all that, people are quick to say give you immediate response to how if I play shit, I'm going to get told I'm shit. Basically that's the way the world now. So I've got to be.
But will that still bother you? Would that bother you?
Yeah, it will, because I think even going through, I try not to read it all, but even when after the announcement last week, and it all happened so quickly. By the way, Barry Hearn, basically, I played golf with him. He says, "Take your time, let me know tonight." So I was planning on doing this next year possibly, and he said, "No, I need to know now before the season starts." So I basically had to make a decision in a day. So everything happened so quickly. But yeah, it's even looking through, he shouldn't be doing it. He's finished. He's past it. He can't compete anymore. And all of a sudden, you can say it doesn't bother you, but it goes in. It can't. You can't help for it not to. But by the same token, my manager used to slaughter me in after matches if I played bad. I mean, Fergie hairdryer stuff in dressing rooms halfway through matches. I'd be getting beat 3-1 when he'd come in and say, you couldn't even repeat what he was saying to me. And then I used to go out and win. It used to work. And another thing that he's kind of took, through his own situation, took a back step sort of second half of my career. And I didn't have that anymore. And I think I missed that as well. Yeah. I responded to that. Whereas not everyone does. Yeah. I think they talk about footballers now, and some need an arm around them, some need to be bollocked. And
I like the phrase, take the stones they throw at you and build a monument. And it's nice that, isn't it? Yeah. It's kind of, do you feel that? Can you take that criticism and use it as an energy source?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was just, for example, when I was 18, 19 or younger, I ordered a new car or something that was coming, and he'd come and say, "You're cancelling that car. You can't. How can you pay for it if you're going to lose it? You can't. I'm cancelling it and all that. And you're shit. He's taking the piss out of you. Look at the shots he's playing, everything." And I'd go out and I'd be raging, and I'd go out and win. Didn't happen every time, but it was a thing that obviously later on in my career I felt I had no one to sort of give me a right good bollocking if I was playing bad. I could have responded possibly.
But what's interesting, though, Stephen, is the example of the manager. He's a guy that saw you at a young age, and he put his money where his mouth was, and he mattered. He was significant in your journey. Why would you care about some nobody on Twitter telling you that you're shit? Why would that be significant? They don't know your journey. They don't know.
I don't know. It's just I suppose it's just it's probably mirroring what you think that your game is anyway. If someone's telling you that, you're probably thinking it yourself, to some degree. So yeah, I think that's why it hits home, or why it possibly it will hit home, as if like you play shit, the same shit with because basically as I am. So basically, a lot of the time it's telling you something that you already know in yourself anyway, I think.
But when do you think you'll be able to watch some of these 7 World Championship victories and actually just go, you know what, I was good and I'm happy that I was good, rather than look at it and go, but I'm shit now? What, like?
I think I did. I did my book, 2-3 years ago, and I had to watch all that stuff back. And I never watched my own stuff. And going through YouTube and stuff, and I actually had seen things I'd forgotten about. And I said to Tom, who was my ghostwriter, I said, no, I was pretty good, wasn't I? I was like, I was doing things that I was surprised, I'd forgotten myself. Because I think I used to tend to, if people ask me about a world title, I wouldn't be able to tell them what year, I wouldn't be able to tell them, but if it's, say, a shot you missed, then all of a sudden I think, I bet that was that one kind of thing. But yeah, no, I think that was the first time I sort of watched back and thought, I was pretty good.
Because it sounds like it's a pretty relentless, unkind place, your head at times.
Oh, very, yeah. Very. I mean, I think, it's, the last World Championship I played in, I lost 13-2, I think it was, to Maguire. And I'd made a 147 in the first round against Stuart Bingham, and I beat John Higgins in the second round. Granted, it wasn't brilliant, but then the last match, and all matches sort of like for the years up to that, I was just sitting in my chair and I'd just slaughter myself, basically. Basically, like the Twitter said, look how shit you become. You can't even play this. You can't even beat this guy.
Yeah.
And that was. Yeah, I was always pretty hard on myself.
So you're basically an all-in kind of person, which is very difficult, because then when you're winning games and you're 20 and you're coming through and you're winning world titles, you are invincible, you are untouchable, you are bulletproof. No one can tell you you're not great, because the evidence is in front of you that you're fine, because you're all in and you're believing that.
Yeah. I mean,
you're getting high on your own supply.
Yeah, there's one World Championship. I went before the first round and told my wife to bring a jacket for the party after the final.
I love that story. Wow.
Brilliant.
But the problem is, when you're all in like that, when you're losing, you're all into the losing mentality.
You got further to fall.
Yeah.
Further to fall. And
so now, on the verge of a comeback, we started this conversation where you said only certain people have got the ability to win relentlessly at world level, and you're one of those rare people. And this isn't me fishing for a headline, because I will caveat this with, I know that you're willing, or you're keen to play down expectations from yourself and from the audience at home. At the back of your brain, right deep in there, do you still believe you're the guy that can win a world championship?
No, not that's precise. Sitting here now, no. So, no.
Could you become that guy again?
If my game technically gets to where I think it is, then I think leading up to that, if I play enough events and get that match, because I played in the World Seniors recently, lost the semi-final to Jimmy White, and my composure wasn't there at the table because I'm not playing enough matches, and my game is not where I need it to be. But sitting here right now, no, I don't believe I can win a World Championship. No, not at all.
So interesting. The example that you refer to in terms of another player with the longevity that you had was Ronnie O'Sullivan, and Ronnie's spoken about how he invested massively in terms of working with a psychiatrist and helping the mental side of life, not just the game. Would that be something that you'd be interested in exploring?
I'm not sure. I think, as I say, I think getting to a stage where I'm happy, I'm able to play all the shots that I want to play. Because I still shot, I just couldn't play shots I wanted to play because my technique had just gone to pot.
Yep.
So I think the important thing for me is to get that right first. And when I can play every shot that I want to play, that I know I can play, It's like I'm in the commentary box. I'm watching Ronnie and not so much Trump because I don't have his cue power, but the shots. I mean, I know all the shots. I know exactly what he's going to do and how to do it, but I just physically can't do it because my technique has been shot. So if I can get back to a stage where that is sound, then anything can happen after that. Then I would be prepared to look at other things because I'd have that as a solid base.
Right.
To
you
look
don't
at
think
other
the
stuff.
psychology now could help you get back to that solid base? It's about the
No, I
snooker,
think it's purely about technique at the moment for me. Is getting that technique back, and then if that comes back, then possibly look at other ways to make myself even stronger. Right. To be able, because I mean, I've been out of the game for 8 years. I'm not saying there's anyone. There's not a lot of people doing things that I never did when I was at the top. There is. I think there's more good players out there. Yeah. The standard down the rankings is better. So it's going to be difficult just to win matches. I mean, to get to the Crucible next year, I'm going to have to win 4 matches. I mean, to win the world title, when you get there, you have to win 5 matches. So basically, got to win a tournament to get to the Crucible, playing some very good players. So to get to that stage, to do that, I'm going to have, my technique is going to have to be sound, and then I'm going to have to build up some sort of composure playing matches.
So interesting. Listen, we're going to finish with our quickfire questions. There aren't many of them. 3 non-negotiable behaviours that you and the people around you have to buy into.
Selfishness.
Can I just say I love the fact that's your first one, by the way.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of these. No one's ever mentioned that as their first non-negotiable behaviour.
I've been told it enough, and non-negotiable. Determined. Self-criticism. I know.
They're good ones. They're not easy ones, by the way. But most people just say, turn up on time.
Yes. What advice would you give to a teenage Stephen just starting out on this journey?
Work. I think that's, I mean, people talk about talent is enough. Talent's not enough. Work, I think.
Very briefly, how low do you go, or did you go with failure, with big defeats?
I think that the worst I got, I lost to a guy called Robert Milkins in the second last season, I think, of my career in Shanghai. And in China, they call me the Emperor of Snooker, the King of Snooker, and I'm fortunate I have so much support there, even now when I go. But I'd lost 5-0 to this guy, and I went back to the hotel and I cried. It's the only time I've ever cried, win or lose at a snooker match. And that was the worst I ever felt. I just felt embarrassed. I felt everything. I thought,
Can I just jump in on that, Stephen? What drove you then? A love of winning or a fear of losing?
Oh, definitely a love of winning.
Was it?
Yeah, definitely winning. Yeah, that's what motivated me to practice. Yeah.
How important is legacy to you?
Yeah, it's important. As I said, I'm still, in China, I'm still seen as like, the most successful. Because I've won 7 world titles. Obviously, it's debatable whether Ronnie will overtake that or not. We just have to wait and see. But yeah, I think it's important. Yeah, I'm still, people. The great debate is who's the greatest, me or Ronnie. And I think, as Tag used to say, as long as you're in that conversation, you've
sure. But how would you like to be remembered when you're dead and gone? How would you like?
I think I'd like to be remembered as someone who changed snooker, changed the way it was played to be successful. It was all about aggressive snooker, just go for your shots, clear the table. That was the way I played. Go for everything. Obviously, you have to temper it a bit when you get older. You don't go for everything when you're getting to pro mat. But I'd like to think I changed the way snooker was played.
Okay. And finally, your one golden rule for people listening to this, to living a high performance life.
Agreed.
And on that, we shall end it. Thank you so much for being with us. I think
Gordon Gekko.
It's brilliant to sit here and have someone talk to us who's so self-reflective and as honest as you are is amazing for us. And I think that I look at it and I think that that honesty is the reason why you were so successful, but also that honesty is the reason why you found it so difficult when you weren't winning, because you don't lie to yourself, do you?
No.
You're totally honest with yourself. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
please hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, give us a thumbs up, leave a review, but somehow get involved with the High Performance Podcast and become part of our growing community. Thanks for being part of the adventure.